Welcome to this instalment of the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries Coach and Officials Development Series. My name is Orazio Santalucia and I am the Project Officer working in Regional Services. Throughout the series, DLGSC hopes to be able to provide coaches and officials tuning in via the podcast or the podcast access to some of the leaders in their field with their amazing. We understand that coaches and officials in all sports are at various stages of their journeys, their own development, and throughout this series, we hope to provide everyone with some great information to assist them with their personal growth and development. Today, we are very fortunate to have Daniel Gibbons on the line. Now, Daniel Gibbons works for the WA Football Commission as the Umpire Coaching and Talent Pathway Coordinator. Daniel also has a previous history working with WA Cricket as the Match Officials Manager. Daniel's career in football, in Australian rules football, spans well over 21 years as an umpire, and he's progressed all the way through from grassroots through to working at the elite level. He's also had over 7 seasons of cricket umpiring experience, as well as 2 to 3 years working as a Match Officials Manager within WA Cricket. So welcome to the series, Daniel.
Thanks, Orazio. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. We're very privileged to have you, and thank you for your time. So what I wanted to do was just to sort of set up who Daniel Gibbons is and what your role has been in both Australian rules football and in cricket, and obviously setting up that we're going to talk down the umpire and officials pathway, and we're going to sort of discuss a few hot topics as well as pathway opportunities and development opportunities moving forward. But first, before we do that, Daniel, I'd like everyone to sort of know a little bit more about you. So your history in Australian rules football to start with if we go with your current role, is quite extensive. I mean, 21 years involved in the sport is pretty huge. Do you want to sort of let everyone know what was your first step into being an official, an umpire, I guess?
Yeah, I started like a lot of people as a teenager, early high school. I've been playing footy, hadn't, the last couple of years had sort of been a little bit more difficult, hadn't been enjoying it as much on the playing side of things, and wasn't that good, as a lot of umpires are. They sort of want to stay involved in the game, but maybe the playing side of things just isn't for them. So that was really my motivation. I enjoyed the game of footy. Wanted to stay involved. While I was still playing, I'd sort of done a little bit of umpiring with my junior club, with their under-9s team, and that gave me a bit of a taste for it. And so I joined up at my junior umpiring club, which is in the Perth district, and joined up there. Started umpiring, really enjoyed it, and I continued to umpire 21 years later. So it all kind of evolved from there, and so it's led down to where I am now.
Mm-hmm. So with that there, is that a typical pathway for an umpire in football to sort of go down? Is it you start as a player and then you move into umpiring? I mean, are we getting other ways into the sport or into the industry, I guess? That's
overwhelmingly the most common sort of route into umpiring. In fact, a lot of the young umpires combine playing and umpiring. So play one day, umpire the next, and that's really a great way. Again, they love the game. They might want to make a bit of money, and what better way to do that than to umpire in a game that they really enjoy. So that's very, very typical. And then we start to see sort of umpires maybe move down and get a bit more serious around their umpiring, and then maybe give away playing and sort of start umpiring full time. But it's certainly something that a lot of umpires can sort of balance the two for quite a while. But inevitably sort of one maybe wins over the other, and it's one takes more of their interest and they direct their attention to that.
Yep. So just a little bit more on your football background. So you progressed through that sort of pathway you mentioned there, where you started playing and then you moved into umpiring. I know what your background is, Daniel, but just to let some people know how in depth your footprint is in umpiring within the Perth district in particular. Do you want to go a little bit more into that, like the fact that you well, you can explain rather than me telling. So what are the next steps of your pathway?
Yeah, so I umpired as a junior, you know, did games, did grand finals, really enjoyed that sort of throughout my high school years into early university. You know, I became, you know, I suppose really loved the environment of the association that we had. So early in university, I took up a role as the association president. I did that for 4 seasons. Wanted to get involved in, you know, the committee side of things and leading the association. We were going through quite a transition at the time. A lot of older umpires sort of transitioning out and the much younger group coming in. So I was kind of part of that transition. Around a similar time, I got interested in more the umpire coaching side of things. So I started doing a bit of umpire coaching, and that evolved to becoming the umpire manager. Ultimately, I was the umpire manager for the Perth district for 10 years. So basically responsible for leading the coaching training program for the umpires, managing our umpire coaches, delivery of the entire program. Around that, I did a bit of senior football umpiring myself, dabbled with various different areas, but I was much more, I suppose, focused and interested around the coaching side of it than the umpiring side. So that's really where my attention sort of went to, and that evolved again to opportunities to umpire, to coaching in the WAFL program, and which led to, I suppose, my most recent and current role, where I'm head coach of the field umpires development squad at WAFL. So I did a couple of years as a match day coach for the development squad, and now this is my 4th season as leading that development squad. So it's kind of evolved from more of a community umpiring focus to now more of an elite focus, but still in that sort of area which I really enjoy, which is trying to help and support umpires moving from junior football to you know, sort of the elite pathway at the start of the WAFL system. So that's kind of where my motivations are and how it's kind of evolved, particularly in sort of the last 5 to 10 years.
That's a very extensive, I guess, involvement in the sport, and in particular the official side of things and being an umpire. I mean, you have literally gone through the whole pathway. You've started as a young player yourself, transitioned into umpiring, transitioned into coaching, into the administrative side of things, and then continued up the pathway, which is amazing. And that sort of highlights that. I think people know, but they might not know enough, that there is an alternative pathway within sport. It's not only the playing side, the official side, which is just as important, is available. Now, with if we go to cricket, because I'd like to highlight the fact that you've had a similar sort of rise up the path, although probably not as long in cricket. So 7 seasons of actually umpiring, which you started in 2012, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I did about 7 seasons of umpiring cricket in the WA Premier Cricket competition. Again, a similar story there. I was playing cricket. I played cricket for much longer, so I played, you know, into my adult years playing senior cricket. And again, not really enjoying it that much towards the end. Wasn't really enjoying the training. I was the type of player that I had to do a lot of training to get results, and trying to balance that with work and things just probably wasn't working that well. And then a friend of mine, actually a work colleague, he was umpiring, we got talking, and that kind of led to the opportunity to take up cricket umpiring. Umpiring's really in my blood a bit, so it wasn't a great stretch to sort of jump towards cricket umpiring. And there is, you know, a few people that sort of do, you know, umpire multiple sports or football and cricket, so it's not unusual. And yeah, so that led to starting in juniors and 4th grade of Premier Cricket, and yeah, developing from my umpiring from there. A couple of seasons in, you know, making my debut in 1st grade, and umpiring for a few years at the 1st grade level, while also being on the state umpire panel. So that gave me, you know, exposure opportunities to more elite pathway as well, and that was coupled with actually working at at the WACA, or now known as WA Cricket. So I was working in Premier Cricket administration, and while my umpiring and Premier Cricket role had sort of no connection, it did provide a nice balance and involvement in both sides of the game, in the administration and umpiring. So, which then eventually led to me taking up the role as match officials manager at WA Cricket a few years ago now.
So you've had a similar rise through both pathways. You've seen grassroots umpire development and umpire recruitment, and then you've sort of been through the whole pathway, which is amazing. And that's why I've got you on the line today, because you're going to be able to sort of discuss with us, I guess, some of the similarities and the differences that both sports, which are big sports in our sporting landscape, sort of provide in regards to, I guess, opportunities for umpire development, as well as maybe roadblocks that are in the way that we could probably all work together to make it a clearer pathway. So, for instance, the similarities are that players can transition into umpiring, I guess, but what other sort of similarities have you seen along the way?
I like to say that umpires tend to sort of think the same way, and they do look at things the same sort of way. So I do see lots of similarities, I suppose, between cricket umpires and football umpires in sort of the mindset around umpiring, the motivations for why they do it. Overwhelmingly, it's a love for the game. Yeah. People, outsiders might think it's for the money, but it really isn't. And that might motivate, a 13 or 14-year-old to get involved, but it's not what motivates someone to stay in umpiring. We put a lot more into it than really the monetary reward sort of demand. So I think it is that love for the game. We love our respective sports, so we want to be involved in that. And with that, I think comes, a similar sort of mindset between all umpires. Yeah. Obviously, the sports are very, very different, but, it boils down to, at the end of the day, decision making in both football and cricket have been, vitally important. So how you get there and what's involved in that can be a little bit different. But that's sort of what it boils down to in the end. And ultimately, the similarities is the challenge of it. It's really challenging going out there. You're the person that everyone's looking towards. You're the key person sort of facilitating the game. So it takes a particular type of person to really be able to do that. And it's definitely a challenge, but it's a challenge I suppose I've really enjoyed, and that's why I've been involved in doing it for that long. Yeah.
So with the onset of, I guess, increased exposure, the media sort of side of things at the moment, be it Australian rules football, be it cricket, be it other professional sports that we've got available to us, that we can just turn the TV on or jump on your smartphone and you've got coverage 24/7. Is that a good or bad thing for umpire and officials development, do you think?
Well, I think it's growing the sport. Certainly the scrutiny on umpires is only increasing. You see that with the coverage, and then I think social media is a big part of that as well. Even to a degree, you're sort of seeing increased scrutiny on umpires at a local level. A lot of the Premier Cricket games, for example, are now live streamed. Yeah. And certainly all the waffle matches, are live streamed now. That's for the first year with them. Yeah. Being live streamed, in addition to what you might see on free-to-air TV or pay TV. So there's really no escaping. If something happens in the game, chances are it's probably captured now. So that scrutiny, even on the lower level umpires, that are effectively amateurs, that's certainly an interesting sort of development, particularly in the last couple of years.
And has that made it, because I guess one of the issues, it's something that does come up, and this is through feedback from stakeholders within all sport, not just the two that we're discussing here, but Recruitment of umpires probably isn't as difficult as what it may seem, but their retention is. So is that, do you think they're linked? The fact that there's higher scrutiny, therefore people go, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore? Or?
I think scrutiny is certainly an element of it. I think what our probably research and experience would tell us, from a football perspective, that it's often life circumstances that impact on an umpire's ability to continue umpiring. I suppose not unlike playing, we see pinch points when an umpire is, approaching year 11 and 12 or into university or transitioning from university to work, times where there's a change in their life and, there's competing priorities and interests. That can be a really difficult time to retain umpires. And that's what we see in our experience. There's a lack of umpires in that sort of 20s to 30s age range because they've got a lot going on in their lives. I can understand that myself and with my life, and a lot of my friends are through umpiring, and some of them are no longer involved because they're working FIFO or they've moved into state, they're starting families. All those sorts of things do impact on a person's ability to continue in the game. So I think scrutiny's part of it, and it's about creating positive environments. But a lot of times it's the pressures of life and how that impacts on what a person can do and sort of their hobbies. That's a really big impact.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, 90%, if not more, and that's just a figure off the top of my head, of umpires and officials that are working within sport are, pretty much amateurs, aren't they? They volunteer their time. I mean, even if, like you said earlier on, if you equate a match payment of, I don't know, $80 or $90 for, if you use cricket as an example, a 6 or 7 hour stint, it doesn't work out to much per hour. So it's not a wage. It's just it's a supplement, I guess. So you can say that you are an amateur, you are a volunteer, really. So do you think, I mean, we've probably just addressed it, but do you think that sometimes we expect a little bit too much of an umpire, be it in both sports? And in that I say, someone a lot smarter than me once told me that if umpires made as many errors in a game that players did, you'd really have something to talk about. Yeah.
Look, there's certainly an expectation of perfection, and that's probably just in life generally, isn't it? And we have high expectations for the umpires. If I look at it from my coaching role, we're taking it seriously. The umpires are taking it seriously. So mistakes are made and errors are made, and that isn't because of a lack of application to what they're doing. It's not because they don't care and they're just out there to run around and take their paycheck at the end of the game. Now, there really is a passion for it. There's a high level of commitment, respect for their role, and that's umpires, across all levels. So yeah, I think I think people just they need to bear that. They need to bear that in mind, that everyone's going out there with their best intent to do the best job that they possibly can, and it's a really difficult job to do. And so that always has to be considered.
Oh, no doubt. And having played Australian rules football, played cricket, knowing that having an official out there for me has always been, it's great having someone there, because otherwise it's chaos. Otherwise you've got to do it yourself, or a coach has to do it, or a spectator has to come out and play that match official role. I'd always rather have someone that's trained to do it than not. And I'd like to think that that's probably the opinion of most people that are out there. So with that in mind, in regards to, it is difficult, it's probably getting more difficult moving on as we progress in our sports. What sort of things are you doing? We'll use your football example at the moment. What sort of things are happening, in regards to umpire development? Like what's changed recently?
A lot's changing. It's quite a rapidly changing environment. I think we've been really fortunate with in football, and the WA Football Commission is really prioritising umpiring, and that's been in the last few years, but particularly probably the last 12 months. If you give you a bit of background, around where we've come from, I think the big development in umpiring in the state has been bringing all of the umpiring under one umbrella. So prior to 2018, there was really all the umpire groups off doing their own thing, and there wasn't a lot of consolidated, oversight and management of them, and that can be quite dysfunctional.
Yeah.
So now with the Umpiring WA structure, we have a state manager, we have other employees working in the umpiring area. It's a much more coordinated, consolidated approach to it. We also have a state umpiring advisory group, and they move between, I suppose they're a direct link between us, our manager, and the WA Football Commission board. So again, it's a level of oversight, it's a level of structure that we didn't have before. So I think that's really made a big difference, bigger picture wise, really getting those structures right, at the state level, because really nothing else can work underneath it unless you have those structures. You have the right employees, you have the resources and funding to go with that. For example, I've only started in January in my role at the Football Commission, and my role has been brought in to have a specific focus around umpire coaching and the talent pathway, which I'm sure we'll speak about sort of what my focus areas are. But that really just goes to show that there is a renewed focus on those sorts of key areas in the umpiring system.
Yep.
And with that becomes new opportunities to, I suppose, improve the way we develop umpires, develop umpire coaches, and that only benefits the game in the long term.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, again, if we just continue on the Australian rules football model here in WA, you're a young 13, 14-year-old kid who is doing, as you mentioned earlier, playing on a Saturday and umpiring on a Sunday, or the other way around. And then umpiring under 10s or under 11s or something like that. They obviously do a couple of years below their actual age. I would have thought would be the ideal. How does that?
Yes.
What does the pathway of that umpire look like to get to, AFL level?
Yeah, so they start with their junior community umpiring club, and we've been visiting those clubs, throughout pre-season, going to a different club each week. So it's been great to see, the programs that they run there. There's masses of, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids joining up. So there is no issues from the recruitment side of things. There's lots of young people wanting to get involved in the game. Predominantly recruitment is young people. Predominantly they are players. And that's where they start. And they can progress through junior football, make their way through the various grades. For umpires that are committed and passionate and show a little bit of talent, they can really progress pretty quickly. There's no shortage of opportunities, is probably the main thing to consider. So from there, there's opportunities to umpire in other senior competitions, and so senior community, metropolitan football, country football, they're sorts of avenues that we're really trying to encourage umpires to take up opportunities in those other areas, particularly for a young umpire. Umpiring senior football provides them lots of benefits in their development.
Yeah.
And then for umpires that, are aspiring to the elite level, that's where our talent programs come into it. So the first stage of that is the WAFL development squads, and that's kind of their first entry level into the WAFL program, and that's a bridging program between their community competitions and the WAFL system. And then from there, there's various different squads. Sorry.
Like, so with a lot of sports, I get, a coach would probably suggest a player should go to a trial to try to get into a squad or something like that. Is it a similar process with umpiring, or?
It's an area we're really doing a lot of work around. So we've just, with the AFL, have adopted the National Umpiring Development Framework, which is based on the FTEM model, which a lot of coaches, I imagine, would be aware of. So we've kind of adopted that, tailored that to our circumstances, and that's a national approach to around, I suppose, a more consolidated approach around talent development. And then with that is the processes that that are associated with that. So last year, I was contracted to undertake a review of the talent pathway here in WA. And so I did a review over several months and looked at the whole system. And from that review, there was 26 recommendations that came from that. A lot of those recommendations were around, what are the processes around talent identification and development of umpires. I think it would be fair to say that, so prior to it, so that talent development can be a lot of gut feel and very ad hoc. I think whether by luck or good fortune, we tend to capture most of the umpires that probably show some talent, but there's always the potential there that someone slips through the cracks and there's a sleeper that might be missed, and we don't want that. We want as many of the best umpires coming through the system as possible. So we are beginning to do a lot of work around our talent identification and development processes to really have a lot more visibility around what talented umpires are out there, and then what are we doing to develop them even before they get into the WAFL system. Generally, there's been a pretty big focus around junior umpires, and that's been a pretty typical sort of way for them to move from junior umpiring into the development systems. But we're also trying to target umpires that might be a bit older or have started umpiring a little bit later in life and umpiring senior football. Well, what opportunities are there for them to move into the WAFL system if that's something that they're interested in? So we're really trying to diversify the talent pathway, and really it's just opportunities for all. And if they want to go somewhere with their umpiring, we want to give them the best chance for them to do that. And that's field boundary and goal umpiring. It's umpire coaching. It's making all those things as many opportunities as possible.
And we've sort of seen, I guess, with the playing participation side of things, the clearer that a pathway looks, I guess the more results you're going to get in regards to participation, because people will choose where they want to be. But if it's muddled up and it's unclear, people don't know. So yes, there's an elite pathway, I guess, and I guess to the top, and in AFL, it's probably quite a lucrative role and position, and so it should be. If you're a field umpire doing a game that's watched by millions of people, well, worldwide, let alone just Australia-wide, with $1 million athletes running around, there's no reason why an umpire shouldn't be well paid for that, and that's great. So with that, does that make your role more difficult because of the fact that, well, geez, the next step up from where you're sort of working, before long they could be doing the next game at Optus Stadium?
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's a very small minority of umpires that will make it to that level. Just from the area where I suppose I'm working in most closely with the development squads, for them to move to to umpiring WAFL Colts, reserves, league, there's quite a few steps involved in that. Not necessarily always a smooth journey, and so to make it to WAFL league level is in any discipline is a significant achievement. I think now with AFLW, there's lots of opportunities for umpires to, I suppose, showcase, their abilities more. It used to be that, they had to sort of be a rookie umpire in the AFL, and they might be an emergency umpire at AFL games, and they really had to sort of use their state league to show that they could umpire at that level. But now there's AFLW, all that's broadcast. There's lots of attention around that, so that's really become probably the key avenue for umpires to say, I'm ready. I want to umpire, men's league footy, and so that's been a real positive for them. So yeah, it's a tough journey. You know, someone like Dean Margetts, who umpired at the highest level for 20 years, you know, it's a remarkable achievement, because just the you know, the dedication to even get there, but then to umpire at the highest level for that length of time, you know, it's really very unique. And yeah, it's difficult. So that ambition, I suppose, that, you know, that pinnacle, that goal is there for umpires, but yeah, it's a tough road. It really is, and we do ask a lot of them to try and get there.
So just to give people a bit more of an idea, again, we'll stick with Australian rules at the moment. Even at your level, and I guess moving up the ranks, what are the fitness requirements? Because that's the one that's obviously one of the biggest challenges. And I guess as we progress and become more professional, that's an area that people can not easily improve, but you can measure that. You know, you can measure fitness improvement and all that sort of stuff. So what's changed from when you started to what you're delivering now?
Well, it's interesting. There's probably a more nuanced approach to fitness expectations than there would have been, you know, say even 5-10 years ago. So there's no longer benchmarks for, like, say, 2K time trials. You know, you have to reach this benchmark to umpire league football. You know, I think we've realised that, you know, there's a lot more diverse umpires involved in the game. You know, a common saying that we say here is, you know, it's the stage you're at, not the age you're at. You know, so it shouldn't be, you know, for, you know, 18 to 20 umpires, you know, only. We've got umpires here at WAFL level that, you know, various different ages. You know, with female umpires becomes, you know, again, more diverse, and you have to adjust, I suppose, the expectations around fitness. There's no doubt that, you know, there's a massive focus on fitness. You know, the physicality, you know, the physical requirements for the umpire in the game is massive. You know, particularly so for boundary umpires. Yeah, so it is extraordinary. You know, the amount of work that an umpire has to do in the off season around their conditioning programs to then come back into good shape in the pre-season. Yeah, they're really not far away from, you know, elite athletes, and that's an umpire. You know, like I said before, you know, effectively an amateur. You know, at WAFL level, they're training 2 nights a week, you know, to umpire their game on the weekends. You know, there's all sorts of their own physical preparation, you know, recovery having to go in around that, and then not to mention all the sort of the personal development side of things that, you know, that's incorporated into that as well. So yeah, it is one of the, I suppose, barriers that, you know, you do have to, like, run in, you know, and, you know, you have to be physically fit, particularly as you move up the elite levels. But what we've said is that, you know, there's really no physical competencies for, you know, a junior umpire. And a lot of them are playing, and they're just naturally, you know, active anyway. It's really when they hit the development squad system that there becomes a big focus on fitness. And look, the focus on fitness isn't because, you know, we just think it's great. It's because, you know, the skill, you know, the decision making and the skills that we demand of the umpires, they have to be fit to be able to execute that across the game. And where their fitness fails is where issues become in, you know, their decision making or their game management or particular skills that we expect of them. So, well, it might seem to the layperson, you know, why is it necessary for them to be able to run, you know, 10 to 12, 15 kilometers a game? It's because that's what the game demands. If they weren't as physically fit as they were, you know, there would be issues, and that would be apparent during games.
Yeah, well, they'd be making decisions from, you know, 50 metres away, 60 metres away, rather than 5. And yeah, I guess as players evolve and get fitter and stronger, the ball moves quicker up and down the ground. So, I mean, at the top level, that's why you've got 3 umpires on the ground, because the ball just moves so quickly. It got to a point where they couldn't keep up. I guess 2 umpires just was difficult, so they introduced 3. And 2.
That's right. And the games only become harder. Sorry, the games only become harder to umpire in more recent years. You know, with the congestion, players around the ball.
Yep.
And people think, oh, well, that's at AFL level, but no, it's not. We see that at junior level as well, with the way the game's played and the game style. The game is a lot harder to umpire in probably the last 5 years than I found it, say 10, 15 years ago, because of the way the game's played, and that flows down from the AFL level to community football.
Yeah. And if we just sort of harp back a little bit to your cricket days, because they're not that long ago. What was the? I mean, it's pretty obvious that the fitness demands are different, but the fact that you've got to be switched on for such a long period of time give you different training demands. And just to give an example, some of the top umpire, like there's an Australian one that escaped my mind. He's now the guy running umpiring in Australia. He was renowned for being fit, and part of his thing was that
Simon Toffel,
Simon Toffel, that's the one. Sorry. Part of his thing was, well, I need to be reasonably fit to be able to be mentally engaged, to be able to umpire at the top level, and there's a certain requirement, I guess, even at that level to be. You don't have to be outstandingly fit, but it does help, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a different type of fitness, that mental fitness to concentrate all day long, as a cricket umpire, to concentrate when sometimes not a lot is happening. It's a real challenge. I found the transition from football to cricket quite an interesting one, where I did say that there was, lots of similarities. There is massive differences in the way, the games are played and the way that feels as an umpire. Football was, you're always active, you're always part of the game. The game moves on so quickly. Cricket, at times, you're there in it, but, also a bystander a bit as well. And, while you have a role every ball, there'll be times where there's just, massive lengths of time where you're not actually called upon to make a decision, I suppose, as we would kind of see it. It brings different challenges, and it's a different level of fitness. But that ability to concentrate, focus for, across the, 6 hours of the day umpiring cricket, I think people probably underestimate how difficult that is. And that's why it becomes, a much more, I think in recent years, particularly at the elite ICC level, you see umpires that probably are, let's say, look a bit fitter than maybe the umpires of the past, because there is that focus on being able to, to have the physical fitness, to have the mental concentration and focus.
And you were sort of on the edge of some of the elite sort of stuff through what you were doing with your role at WA Cricket. So just to let people, or make people aware, there were certain fitness requirements, weren't there? Like as you progressed up, especially the ones that are on the first class panel and things like that, they had to meet certain fitness requirements, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's fitness tests, medical screenings and that kind of thing. I suppose that's a little bit different with cricket. You had to get your eyesight tested, your hearing tested. We had to go for a medical, things like that, because they had to sort of be, as far as they could be sure that you could sort of stand up to a day's play. And particularly as the higher you went, it became 3 days of play or 5 days, or 4 or 5 days of play, and that's a completely different kettle of fish. Again, so I think that's probably an area where cricket's evolved as well, is that has been more of a focus on on fitness, and it's fitness that's related to the sport that that you're officiating. When we didn't expect cricket umpires to go out and run a 2K or a 5K time trial like we expect football umpires to do. So it's relative to what you're doing, but it's absolutely a focus.
Yeah, well, that's good. Now, with we sort of touched it a little bit earlier, but both we're in a world at the moment where technology is constantly evolving. Both sports that we've just mentioned, both AFL and Australian rules and cricket, decision making. An umpire has to make decisions at different speeds for different situations and scenarios. How has technology enabled you as a coach, and you've worked as a umpire developer in both sports? How how has technology assisted that pathway? To
I think, from cricket, there's obviously, there's Hawkeye and, those sorts of decision review things that have played a part in the game. In some ways, maybe made the umpire's job easier. In some ways, made it harder. But at the end of the day, the vast majority of cricket umpires don't have access to that technology. They've got to go out on game day and make the judgment, make the decision in the, in the old style.
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned around the video streaming and I suppose the increase in prevalence of that, and we've seen that in football umpiring. That the ability to have the games recorded and then be able to sit back with the umpire and view their game back, and that's not just from a decision-making point of view, but it's from a whole range of different areas, their movement and positioning, their skills. Yeah, we can look at all sorts of different areas. It's even probably 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't have the streaming of the games at my level. So those games, they were just the game footy, and we had a match day coach, an umpire coach that went out there and provided feedback to the umpires. The game was run and done, and you kind of moved on. But now we get to training. More often than not, the games that they're doing have been filmed. They have the ability to sit down and analyze all that, and they can sit with their coach or their other umpires and look at their umpiring performance and analyze all those areas. And ultimately, there's no better way to develop than to see yourself umpiring.
Yeah.
And it just makes a massive difference. Like, we can say to them, you got to do this, you got to do that, you should do that, you should do this, until they see it themselves.
Yeah.
It just doesn't land for them.
Yeah. So with Australian rules, there'd be even things like running patterns, wouldn't there? Like you're probably seeing an umpire take the long way to get from point A to point B, when you can just highlight, well, you could run that angle and you get there and be able to get into that position a lot quicker, and you probably take a kilometre or two off your full match running, which is a big part of. I mean, you're going to fatigue at some stage, no matter how fit you are. So the less kilometres you've got to run, the better your decision making. Is that a link? I mean, have I sort of gone down the right channel there? Or?
No, you've hit the nail on the head. In fact, we really speak to umpires very little about just pure decision making. There's almost always a reason around the decision, whether it's right or wrong. And so positioning is our number one focus. They have to be in what we class as the right positions to be in a comfortable decision-making position. So that's where, their ability to run is linked to their ability to make position consistently. And then that's linked to their decision-making ability. So while, a football, follower might think, oh, we go out on game day and we say, you've missed this, you've missed that. You should have done this, you should have done that. In fact, particularly at my levels, at more the development, but that really is across the board, is that we very rarely talk to an umpire about a decision, particularly on game day, because it's been done. There's nothing changing that, unless you can see a trend in the game where it's obvious that they're missing a lot of holding around the contest or something like that, and you can maybe help them and say, oh, let's just identify this a little bit closer. We'll talk to the umpires around their positioning, their skills, their management of the game, their teamwork with the other umpires. And similarly, when we get to training, that's where we're focusing on. We're looking at, what are the reasons why we might have missed that push in the marking contest, or, a particular, scenario issue happened in the game. So that's really what umpire development is about. It's putting all those pieces together. Decision making is so important, yes, but there's a lot of pieces that go into that puzzle of why an umpire might get a decision right or wrong.
Yeah. So that's a great way to sort of we're going to get to the point where we're going to wrap this up very, very soon. This has been fantastic, Daniel. So Daniel Gibbons from the WA Football Commission. So so it's about the process, which is what a lot of sports coaches and we've sort of discussed that in previous webinars that we've had in this series, that it's about the journey, not about the actual your destination. It's about how you get there. So the decision making, it is what it is, and I think I just mentioned a little bit earlier, if an umpire or an official made as many errors as what a player does in most games that they play, we'd really have something to talk about. So I love the fact, and hopefully that message gets across, is that each umpire, no matter how well they're trained, is going to have their interpretation of what's just happened in front of them, just like a player does. A player will make a decision on what they see, and the more you train about getting in better positions, the more, I guess, correct decisions you're going to make. But at the same time, if we had 3 different umpires here adjudicating a certain scenario, you're probably going to get 3 slightly different interpretations of what's just happened, and that's human nature, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, we're doing a lot of work around perception and the role that plays in decision making. So I think people sort of see, and you hear that in the AFL, there's 3 different interpretations out there. The umpires have seen it 3 different ways, but it's not because they're not coached in the same way or they don't have the same understanding of the law. It's their perception, and that. So we're trying to, I suppose, make the umpires more aware of what are they looking at.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from experience as well. An experienced umpire can see something different, see something that an inexperienced umpire might not see because of years and years of training, perception, and the knowledge and experience that's sort of built into that. So it's an area that we're only just sort of starting to dabble in a little bit. The AFL have done a lot of work around perception and decision making. They have an umpire training center with basically catalogs of video decision-making scenarios, and their umpires can test themselves against that. And effectively, all that's doing is, these sorts of quizzes, it's building your memory bank of decisions. And, the way the human brain works, and we were taught this a lot in cricket, is that, the more examples of that particular decision that you've seen, your brain will pull bits of information from your previous experiences and use that to help you make the decision then and there. So you're not just deciding on what you see right then. You're using all your knowledge and experience to help you make that decision, because really it happens too quick for the human brain to just be able to perceive and decide right then and there. So yeah, we're doing a lot of work around that, and it's really sort of interesting area that we're going into around perception and decision making.
So I guess that's a great sort of area where modern technology has enabled that sort of training to evolve, and that can happen both sport, well, all sports. I mean, let's be honest, we've got more coverage of you name it, we've got it. So yeah, the more times a situation, a scenario, an event is in front of you, the more opportunities you're going to get to test your, as you said, your decision-making ability. So it'll just be highlights packages, I guess, of, stoppage A, stoppage B, what have you seen there, what have you seen there, all that sort of stuff, because that's exactly what they see on a game day. I think that's fantastic, and that must be amazing for yourself as a coach educator. As an umpire educator, umpire developer, to have that with you. I mean, can you send those packages through on maybe like Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that as homework? Yeah,
so something we've just launched is Umpiring WA TV, and so effectively like a YouTube of umpiring. It's something, so some of this sort of resourcing that's maybe more available at the elite level, we want to make it available at community level. That's really one way that we're trying to support our umpire coaches better, to provide them more resources that they can use to roll out at their training. But then, this resource will be available, to umpires, but also the broader football community to look at, okay, well, this is the way umpires are being coached. So there's modules on holding the ball, modules on marking contests. And as it develops, we'll have a catalog of videos in there that people can see, all right, well, this is exactly how it's interpreted, and this is the reasons why. And we're using a lot of community football, vision to do that. So, AFL is great, but, we want to give umpires, they don't need to be able to see the type of games that they're umpiring, see the umpires that they're, either themselves or they're umpiring with. So that's really exciting. You know, it was only launched, you know, a couple of weeks ago, so it's really in its infancy, but we want to increase effectively the resourcing, you know, that's available to umpires and umpire coaches, and technology is just the key way to go about doing that. Yeah. And the fact is, we've got all these games live streamed and all these, you know, all this vision available. We just got to make use of it. Yeah. You know, it'd be silly not to.
No, definitely, and that's a fantastic way to really highlight the development, and that's a great segue into us wrapping up this. I mean, we could keep going on and on and on, and I've taken time than I said I was going to take of yours, Daniel. So I really, really appreciate this. So just to sort of wrap up, blue sky thinking, if you had no limit to, and you're a very, very passionate umpiring officials developer, there is no doubt, if you haven't seen that, I'm not sure what is. Yeah, crystal ball, blue sky, there's no limit to what you can do. What's the next level of umpire development, no matter what the sport, from what you said?
Yeah, well, look, I think, you know, maybe a few sort of out there ideas that we've been sort of dabbling with. You know, we've been talking internally about, you know, different umpiring positioning systems. You know, I think one of the challenges that we have is that the umpire is seeing the game from the opposite view of the spectators more often than not. So we've been looking at different ways of how could we adjust our positioning. You know, maybe set up, you know, umpiring, you know, the umpiring teams a little bit differently to counteract that. Also to counteract the physical demands of the game. You know, how can we maybe reduce or you know, pull back on what the physicality of what the umpires need to do to prioritize decision making. So yeah, there's maybe been a few sort of ideas around that, and I know Eddie Maguire's had thrown a few different things out there as well. So you know, it's worth considering these things. You know, there might be a bit of you know, amongst the whole, you know, there might be a few gems of ideas in there that you can pull out. But I think personally, from my perspective, if you know, look at some bigger picture things, it's about, you know, how we promote a better understanding of what umpiring is and what umpiring does, you know, for those involved in the game. You know, how do we get them to experience and appreciate what umpiring is? Yeah. And ultimately, umpiring is just, it's no different to be involved in a football club, you know, or your cricket club. You know, that's why umpires get involved, because they want to be part of a team and part of a club environment, and it provides that same thing to them. So I think people would be surprised if they came to one of our umpire training sessions and just see how it functions and how much it is like a club. Yeah. And the umpires are there because their motivations is, you know, it's a hobby, it's a social, they're there with like-minded people doing something that they're passionate about. So I think that's one thing. And then clearly there's, you know, a need to improve understanding of the laws and decision-making processes in the community. So, you know, a bit around our conversation around how do we actually coach umpires, what our focus areas are, you know, there needs to be a better understanding of that. You know, that's the same with cricket, same with, you know, AFL, probably any sport. An official in the sport would say the average follower of the game, player, coach, just doesn't understand the laws and the decision-making process of the game, you know, well enough. And if they could, and they had a bit of appreciation of the umpire and their role, I think it would make a big difference, you know, around these things of, you know, abuse and dissent and umpire appreciation and retention. I think it would make a big impact. So, yeah, at times I like to think of how great would it be if every person could umpire a game of footy, or everyone could come down to umpire training and just see what it's like. Because the people that come here that maybe outsiders go, wow, I just didn't understand or appreciate just what's involved in this and what goes into it and what the umpires are doing. So there'll be a couple of things that, you know, if we could change those mindsets, I think it would make a big difference.
Well, that's you won me over. You had me at hello. So that's all fine. Look, I hope that everyone listening today or watching has got a lot out of this and has much more appreciation of what a crucial role that our umpires and officials have with the continued development of our sports, our various sports. And we've discussed in Australian rules football quite extensively. We've had a discussion about cricket as well, but a lot of the issues, and I'm sure you chat amongst other sports as well, because you know You're quite well connected. A lot of the issues would be quite similar, I would have thought, along the way. I mean, we've probably got more participants than we have officials, and it'd be great to think that we can provide some more support and more guidance for our officials and umpires and referees in all the various sports that are out there, because without them, the game just can't run, can't evolve. So I think they've got a crucial role. And what you've highlighted is that the development pathways are getting much more robust and much more effective as we're developing, which is fantastic to hear. So in our show notes, we're going to have some links to some resources, be it websites and some other type of resourcing that Daniel's going to provide. So we'll have those links in the show notes. So be it if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to this via your podcast agent, look in the show notes and we'll have some resourcing there. So Daniel, thank you very much for your time today. I hope you've enjoyed sharing your love and passion for umpiring and being an official. I've known you for a while, so I know how passionate you are, but it's great that other people now know how passionate you are, and good luck with everything moving forward. There's some really, really exciting things happening at WA Football Commission level and above. So thank you for your time today.
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great to discuss these things, so I appreciate the opportunity. Not
a problem. So that was Daniel Gibbons there, WA Football Commission, Umpire Coaching and Talent Pathway Coordinator. My name is Orazio Santalucia. I'm the Project Officer for the Peel region, working in regional services here with the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries. This has been the Coach and Officials Development Series. Thank you for tuning in.